We move on now to pre-advised questions from the general public. I'd like to ask Mr. Taylor to come forward.
Okay, so I'd like to use this public speaking slot to make a statement covering a few different areas. And the first thing I'd like to do is just draw in public to the whole committee's attention something that happened at the last meeting. I was approached in the public seating and asked not to report or tweet on one of the contributions, one of the presentations made to the panel. I thought that was very surprising, and I thought it was an inappropriate thing to happen at a public meeting. I drew it to the attention of the chair after the meeting, and I was told that perhaps the officer who was presenting wasn't aware it was a public meeting or wasn't aware that the public were present. And I think that as well is surprising, and it perhaps suggests that if the public weren't present in the room, that you would be having a different conversation. So I think that in a way, it makes a mockery of having a public meeting. If the presence of the public is going to change what is said. Another thing I'd like to come on the last meeting, you had the feedback from the staff.
I'd quite like to answer each question so we go through, if that's okay. So I can't really answer on behalf of Susie Tolbert, who's not here, but I can answer on behalf of myself. And the comment that she made was about the particular drug that was being used by the individuals who sadly were found dead on the riverbank. Now, I do think that there is information that is exchanged that isn't in the public domain. If she had realised you were here, either she could have asked me as the chair to clear the meeting, or she would not have provided that information in the meeting. But actually, there is information exchanged in public meetings that is not part of the public discourse, and we have procedures for that ordinarily, as you will know, because we clear meetings when we want to discuss information that is confidential. So in my view, it is appropriate to acknowledge that there is information that, for very good reasons, and in this instance it was to do with the concern that if the precise drug was disclosed publicly, that it would send a message out to the drug-using community that other drugs were safe, when there was a broader concern that there were a number of drugs currently circulating that the services had concerns about. So and that was my response to you. So I think you've given a partial account of the reason for why I responded to you. And I think it is legitimate that sometimes information is exchanged, and as I said, we have procedures for that.
Well, I don't think that there's any problem with exchanging information confidentially. The problem was that the proper process wasn't gone through, and it's not just important for members of the public. It's important for all members of the committee, particularly the councillor members, for them to know what's confidential and what's not, so they can know what to pass on. So I think going through the proper process is necessary. So the second point was on the Star Chambers. Now the paper that was discussed at the last meeting hasn't been published, so one of the things I was going to do is suggest that is published. It's something I asked for following the last meeting. And just on a general point on the Star Chambers, that was only an oral report. These are very secretive things that the Commission hasn't made public that sort of when they're happening, and I can't find out sort of what was said in detail at that meeting, what the Commissioner thinks about what the partnership is doing. So I'd just like to encourage you to publish more information about the Star Chambers.
We're very happy to publish the supporting notes for the information. We do need to look through them and just make sure there's nothing that needs redacting, but we're very happy to do that. They're pretty anatomic.
Okay, thank you. Now on tasers, now the partnership knows that in December 2012 you were told that in January this year we would start to see tasers being carried by the Labour police in Cambridge. That didn't happen, so that report was inaccurate. In April you were told that there would be a date published for tasers being handed out to non-firearms officers. You were told that date would be published imminently, but in fact what happened is the day after the partnership meeting, the police made some kind of announcement on tasers, which was reported by some people as, by the Cambridge News, as saying that tasers had then been distributed. So the day after your meeting, the day after you asked about tasers, you hadn't been told that the rollout was going to happen, and in fact it appears it may have happened the next day. Now, I think that had had an open discussion at this meeting, we might have found out a little bit more about what had actually happened, because there was a lot of contradictory information in the press on that first day of the rollout on the 1st of May. Had tasers been rolled out to all firearms police, as some were reporting, or was it something that was still going to happen in the future? And I'd also just like to say, so you've been told that tasers have been rolled out now to neighbourhood police officers in Cambridge, but at the October North Area Committee, I asked a question about how they were being used in North Cambridge, and I was told that the rollout hadn't happened there. So there seems to be a disconnect between what's being told to the Community Safety Partnership and what the local police officers told the North Area Committee, and I can't balance that, and neither can some of the North Area's councillors.
I'm going to ask Inspector Steve Poppett to respond to this.
Mr. Salmon, just in relation to the first point, Neil Sloan has asked me to recount this to you. Neil's response is, the presentation of the CSP in December 2012 was intended to give the CSP a clear steer on the local deployment of taser to a small number of officers and which does not extend to neighbourhood policing team officers. As remarked in this question and was explained in the presentation, I'm not forcefully for taser. My presentation in December concentrated on the local use rather than force use. With regards to the April meeting as outlined, I gave a local answer, not as the force lead for this, but locally. Apologies if any confusion was caused. In relation to the North Area question, the local policing team under the command of Sergeant Jason Ragg, the local neighbourhood officers, if you like, as well as the PCSOs, those local neighbourhood officers don't carry taser. So the response is accurate in that it only covers that very, very small number of what we would describe as local officers.
Would you like to move on to the next question?
Yeah, but you obviously know the difference between what you've been told before and what you've been told now. So on eSIMs, the data sharing website, I'd just like to point out that the Police and Crime Commissioner is repeatedly stating that the only information which is shared on eSIMs is the fact that an individual has come into contact with an organisation. That is at odds with what has been presented to this committee. Now, I'd just like to point out that difference, really, because as a member of the public, who do I believe? Do I believe the Commissioner? Do I believe the papers to this committee? And it's particularly important with the Police and Crime Panel, who are trying to oversee and scrutinise what the Commissioner is doing. I think, who should they believe? Their chairman tells them to look at the Community Safety Partnerships, and there's information here, and what the Commissioner is saying.
I can't respond to what the Commissioner does or doesn't say, but we've had quite extensive discussions about the use of eSIMs here, which are limited, and we had an initial concern about data protection issues, so we looked at it very thoroughly, and the second time we talked about it, we had a focus on data protection as part of that. So we've looked at the data we hold, we've looked at the protocols for sharing that data, and we've looked at the safeguards against data being shared inappropriately. I don't know if do you want to say any more, Linda? But I think we have described it as a broader database, because it is a broader database. But we've also had a concern about the data sharing aspects of it, and that we've looked at really quite carefully here. More so, I think, we've had a much longer debate here, and a more detailed debate than probably anyone else who's using it.
And we're using it in exactly the same way as we always would have used a database, with only proportionate sharing and only where it's absolutely necessary, in the same way as we have done for years with problem-solving groups. So nothing has changed other than it's a more efficient process for doing that.
Thank you. Well, that's clarified that when the Police and Crime Commissioner says it's only recording contacts, but it's not. He's not accurate there. So I'd also like to in your papers today, you've got a response from the magistrates. So I'd like to encourage you, if you can, to publish that response. Because I can't quite understand from the couple of notes that you've got in your papers what's been said. Are local magistrates in Cambridge now pushing the government to publish their court lists online? I don't know if that's the correct interpretation of what's been said. And I know that the magistrates have pointed out that the Crown Court lists are published. They're not really published. It's only a kind of notice board version of the list that are published. It's not the full listing information. It's just the name of the individual, I think the name of the judge at the time. So it's very brief information. It's certainly not the full list. And also the concerns that were raised about the openness of our local courts weren't just restricted to the list and the record from the courts being published. It was slightly broader than that, so I'd be interested to see if their response is any broader.
I'll put the response on the website, and as I said, we will need to wait to see what the outcome of the inquiries is. That's the response that we've had from. But we have had a response, and I think that's a step forward.
And the last point is just one that I've made a few times, is I would encourage you to list in your minutes who is absent from these meetings. I know you've refused to do this before, to actually list the magistrates as absent, because if you look at your website, you say that they are an equal member with all the rest of you, so why not put them on the minutes as absent, and that might help people campaigning to actually get them to attend.
I'm just going to ask Linda to respond to the specific question about absence. We do put apologies and attendees on the minutes.
But not absent.
We did discuss in the past, distant past, the thing is that not everybody sitting around the table is a statutory member. Some are here voluntarily, and it just seemed a bit confrontational to do it in that way, and that was the decision made at the time. I don't know whether the board still want that. So.
I mean, it's up to the magistrate whether or not they want to send a member. We've obviously invited them to do that, and that is on record. Yes.
Talking specifically about the attendance of the magistracy, we've been in touch with them. They have been through quite a big reorganisation, and they didn't know if they could add value by sending somebody. I've been in contact with them. I'm hoping that a representative will turn up for the development day, and they can see from that whether there is value in them being here, and after that we can talk about whether we should say when they turn up or not, and we monitor them.